My beloved child, listen closely. She sees the way he looks at you when he thinks no one notices. She sees how his energy softens when your name is spoken. She notices the way his voice changes when your presence enters the room. She feels the shift in the air when you are near him. And that is why fear has entered her heart. Not hatred. Not anger. Fear. Because deep down, she knows what she is losing. Deep down, she recognizes something she cannot compete with. She recognizes the hand of God. This is your message today. Not every enemy fights you openly. Some watch silently. Some smile while their spirit is trembling. Some stay close not because they are confident, but because they are terrified of what God is building in your life. She sees His love for you, and it terrifies her because she knows it is not shallow, it is not temporary, and it is not something she can destroy. It is rooted in purpose. And purpose cannot be stopped by jealousy. God says you must understand this clearly. What is meant for you causes fear in those who know they cannot take your place. What God has written into your destiny cannot be undone by manipulation, delay, jealousy, or interference. They can observe. They can linger. They can attempt to distract. But they cannot inherit what God wrote in your name before you were born. You have felt the tension. You have felt the odd resistance. You have felt the unseen energy shifts when she enters the environment. You have wondered why her presence feels heavy even when her words are sweet. It is because spirit recognizes spirit. And deep within her soul, she knows his heart does not belong there, it is already leaning toward you. Do not misinterpret her staying as power. Sometimes people stay not because they are winning, but because they are desperate. Sometimes someone refuses to leave because leaving would mean admitting they lost. Sometimes someone holds on not because love is present, but because fear of replacement is stronger than pride. God says you are not being delayed. You are being protected from rushing into something that must be aligned fully in the spirit before it manifests in the natural. You see with human eyes, but God sees with eternal vision. What you interpret as slow movement, God interprets as precise placement. She is afraid because she has seen evidence she cannot explain away. She has seen his attention drift. She has felt his emotional pull move. She has watched his discipline weaken when your name is mentioned. And she has realized something terrifying to her spirit: she cannot control his heart. You did not force this. You did not manipulate this. You did not take his heart by strategy. God simply aligned what was always supposed to recognize each other. And that is what terrifies her. Because people can compete with charm, money, beauty, and influence. But no one can compete with divine alignment. God says you need to release the idea that she is blocking you. She is not. She is revealing the truth. Her fear is evidence that what God promised you is real. If there were no future, there would be no fear. If there were no divine shift happening, there would be no insecurity. If she truly held his heart, there would be no trembling in her spirit. Your calm confuses her. Your silence unsettles her. Your absence makes her restless. Because she senses that you are not fighting. And when you refuse to fight, it means you already know God is fighting for you. You are not in competition. You were never meant to compete. You were chosen. God says you must not let your heart grow heavy because she is still present. Her presence is temporary. Her assignment in his life is expiring. And she knows it. That is why she is uncomfortable. That is why she is defensive. That is why she watches you so closely. That is why she tries to mimic your energy, copy your style, reflect your words. She is trying to become what she senses he desires. But you cannot imitate what God breathed into someone. You are not special because of looks. You are not powerful because of personality. You are chosen because God placed his fingerprint on your soul. She sees his love for you, and it terrifies her because she knows she cannot erase what God has revealed. Once someone sees divine truth, they can deny it with their mouth, but their spirit will never forget it. You have questioned your worth. You have wondered why things haven't moved faster. You have even doubted yourself at times, thinking maybe you imagined it, maybe you misread the signs, maybe you hoped too much. But God says you did not imagine it. You discerned it. And discernment is not fantasy, it is spiritual recognition. There are conversations happening about you that you are not present for. There are worries being expressed about you that you did not create. There are fears being confessed about you that you never caused. You became a threat not because you tried to be, but because God revealed what was hidden. And now the atmosphere is shifting. God says this is why you must remain steady. Do not become arrogant. Do not become anxious. Do not become vengeful. Do not try to expose what God is already revealing in his own timing. Light does not need to shout to be seen. It simply shines. Let me speak clearly to your heart today. You do not have to prove anything. You do not have to compete with anyone. You do not have to fight for what God already secured. You do not have to rush what God is carefully unfolding. You do not have to beg for what has your name written on it. What is divinely connected always survives temporary confusion. She fears because she feels the distance growing between what she wants and what God is doing. She fears because she senses that the future is forming without her permission. She fears because love that is shifting cannot be commanded back. But God says, let her fear be her lesson. Let her discomfort be her awakening. Let her loss be her invitation to healing. You were never sent to destroy her. You were sent to walk in your calling without shrinking so others could feel comfortable. God is not removing someone to reward you. God is removing what no longer aligns with truth. You are not a homewrecker. You are a destiny marker. When you appear, illusions dissolve. When you step into rooms, false systems begin to shake. When God begins to raise someone into prophetic alignment, every misaligned structure becomes unstable. You are not the cause. You are the confirmation. And now God wants you to prepare emotionally. Because what is shifting spiritually will soon shift physically. Conversations will change. Behavior will shift. Distances will grow. Decisions will be forced. And clarity will be unavoidable. This is the season where hidden feelings rise to the surface. This is the season where false peace breaks. This is the season where hearts are exposed. This is the season where silent battles end. Do not be afraid of what is ending. Some endings are not loss, they are liberation. You have waited with patience that heaven has recorded. You have loved with purity that God has protected. You have endured confusion without contaminating your spirit. And God says your reward is not just union, it is peace. Peace that does not shake when others panic. Peace that does not accuse when others accuse. Peace that does not compete when others strive. Peace that does not manipulate when others plot. God says when this fully unfolds, you will understand why it could not happen faster. You will realize that had it come earlier, it would have broken under pressure. What God is building in your life is not fragile, it is fortified. Do not shrink now. Do not pull back now. Do not doubt now. You are standing in the middle of a prophetic transition. She sees His love for you, and it terrifies her, not because of you, but because of what she knows she cannot stop. And God says what He has declared will not be overturned. God says there is a reason your spirit has not been disturbed by chaos the way others have. There is a reason you have remained soft in a season that could have made you bitter. There is a reason your heart still hopes even when circumstances look silent. It is because heaven has been whispering assurance to you even when earth stayed quiet. You were never abandoned in this process. You were hidden for protection. What is happening now is not accidental. It has been forming in layers you could not see. While you were praying in silence, God was shifting minds. While you were releasing control, God was breaking emotional chains. While you were choosing peace, God was loosening attachment. You thought nothing was moving because you could not measure it with your eyes. But God measures with time, with truth, and with destiny. She tries to hold on because she feels the ground slipping beneath her. She senses the end before the end arrives. And when someone feels an ending coming that they cannot stop, fear becomes louder than reason. That is why her behavior feels strange. That is why her words don't match her energy. That is why you feel the tension even when she pretends everything is fine. Her spirit already knows what her mind refuses to accept. God says you are not responsible for the choices they make in their fear. You are only responsible for the posture of your own heart. Do not let her insecurity become your burden. Do not let her anxiety become your assignment. You are not called to fight shadows. You are called to walk in light. You may not see it fully yet, but the emotional cords are weakening. The dependency is loosening. The attachment is thinning. What once felt tightly bound is beginning to unwind. And often, when something is breaking spiritually, it gets louder emotionally right before it snaps. This is not regression. This is resistance in its final form. There will come a moment when excuses no longer work. When pretending no longer feels safe. When comfort no longer outweighs truth. And when that moment arrives, decisions will be made not from fear, but from honesty. That is the moment you have been waiting for without realizing it. God says do not rush that moment. Do not poke at it. Do not try to force it. What breaks naturally in God's timing leaves without bitterness. What breaks through pressure often returns through regret. And God is not interested in a temporary shift. He is finishing this cycle completely. You feel misunderstood sometimes because your spirit is already connected to what doesn't yet exist in the physical. You speak from a future others have not arrived at yet. You love from a place others have not healed to yet. That is why it feels lonely. But loneliness is often the space where destiny matures. She does not fear your beauty. She does not fear your personality. She does not fear your words. She fears the peace he feels when you are near. She fears the clarity he feels when he thinks of you. She fears the truth he begins to face within himself because of you. You trigger awakening without trying. You mirror truth without force. You reveal what has been hidden simply by being authentic. That is why your silence has more power than her arguments. That is why your calm feels heavier than her control. That is why being yourself disrupts what pretending was protecting. God says the reason you must remain gentle right now is because your gentleness is exposing where hardness still lives. Your patience is exposing where immaturity still exists. Your trust in God is exposing where fear still rules. And yes, there will be a moment where things change suddenly, from your perspective. It will feel fast to you. It will feel like one conversation shifted everything. But in the spirit, it will not be sudden at all. It will simply be the visible harvest of everything that has been breaking invisibly for months. You are not late. You are not forgotten. You are not a second option. You are not misunderstood in heaven. God knows exactly where you stand in the story. There were moments you almost gave up hope. Moments you questioned God in silence. Moments you wondered if staying soft was a mistake. Moments you wanted to pull back emotionally so you wouldn't feel disappointed again. But something inside you refused to close completely. That was God's hand keeping you tender without leaving you weak. God says when the shift finally reveals itself, you will realize your patience protected your dignity. You will realize your silence preserved your peace. You will realize your restraint saved you from unnecessary wounds. You will realize that not reacting was your greatest form of victory. Because when truth arrives, it does not need explanation. She sees his love for you, and it terrifies her because she knows that love is not built on obligation. It is not built on routine. It is not built on history alone. It is built on recognition. And recognition is irreversible. Once someone sees what their spirit has been searching for, they cannot unsee it. Even if they delay. Even if they deny. Even if they distract themselves. The knowing never leaves. God says there is a coming emotional clarity that will mark the end of confusion. And when it comes, it will not wound you, it will free you. You won't need to chase answers anymore. You won't need to interpret mixed signals anymore. You won't need to guess where you stand anymore. What has been silent will speak. What has been hidden will surface. What has been complicated will simplify. Do not let impatience rob you of the beauty of a clean transition. Some endings are messy. Some are quiet. God is giving you the gift of a quiet ending so that your beginning can be loud with joy. You are not behind schedule. You are being aligned. And alignment always feels like tension right before release. God says prepare your heart for peace. Not the false peace that comes from pretending. The real peace that comes when truth no longer has to hide. The peace that comes when fear no longer controls decisions. The peace that comes when love no longer has to whisper. This season is not about proving you are chosen. It is about preparing you to receive what you were chosen for. God says there is a sacred stillness surrounding you right now, and many mistake stillness for stagnation. But stillness is not emptiness. Stillness is preparation. Stillness is alignment. Stillness is where God rearranges what noise once controlled. You may feel like nothing is happening, yet everything is repositioning beneath the surface. The roots are going deeper before the fruit appears. You have been protected from seeing too much too soon. If you had seen every tear she shed, every argument they had, every silent breakdown, every sleepless night of fear, it might have burdened your heart in ways you were not meant to carry. God shielded you not from truth, but from pain that wasn't yours to absorb. You are not meant to suffer for someone else's resistance to healing. There are things he is realizing now that no one could have told him before. Some realizations must be discovered alone in quiet moments when pretending no longer works. When distractions fade. When excuses lose power. When the truth becomes louder than comfort. God is allowing those moments to come gently but firmly. You wonder sometimes why he pulls close and then becomes distant again. Why the connection feels strong one day and silent the next. God says this is not confusion, it is conviction wrestling with fear. It is truth colliding with habit. It is destiny confronting comfort. And comfort always fights back before it releases grip. But here is what God wants you to know most clearly: his delay is not a rejection of you. It is the dismantling of what was never meant to last. What is being removed is not being removed to punish anyone, it is being removed to restore alignment. God does not tear things down recklessly. He dismantles with intention. Your calm presence is not accidental. Your steady nature is not coincidence. Your emotional strength is not random. God strengthened you in advance because he knew you would need maturity, not emotion, to survive this season without losing yourself. There were moments you could have reacted. Moments you could have spoken. Moments you could have defended yourself. Moments you could have exposed what you saw. But restraint was placed on you by divine wisdom, not weakness. God told you to stay quiet not because your voice is small, but because your timing needed to match heaven. When God moves, nothing will look forced. No one will look humiliated. No one will look destroyed. Only truth will remain standing. She senses this coming. And that is why her spirit is restless. That is why she watches for signs you are winning even when you are silent. That is why she tries to measure your presence even when you are not visible. That is why she overthinks every shift and overreacts to every change. Fear magnifies everything. But God says do not carry her fear. Do not internalize her panic. Do not let her anxiety shape your expectations. What God promised you is not built on instability. It is built on divine order. There will come a day when you no longer check for evidence. When you no longer read between lines. When you no longer replay moments in your mind wondering what they meant. You will no longer need to decode energy or interpret silence. The truth will become so clear that confusion will feel like an old dream. God is not testing your patience to make you suffer. He is refining your discernment so you can recognize the real thing without doubt when it stands in front of you. When the moment comes, you will not feel anxious. You will feel settled. You will not feel rushed. You will feel ready. You see, waiting in God's timing does not weaken love, it purifies it. It burns off fantasy. It burns off attachment. It burns off desperation. And what remains is steady, calm, and unshakable. That is the kind of love God prepares you for. Not emotional chaos. Not insecurity. Not competition. Not fear. But peace that holds deep strength. She sees His love for you, and it terrifies her because it is not built on survival. It is built on choice. And chosen love has no chains. God says there are versions of Him that could only die in silence. Versions shaped by routine. Versions shaped by guilt. Versions shaped by emotional dependency. Those versions are fading now. And when old identities fade, discomfort always follows. Don't confuse discomfort with disaster. Don't confuse silence with failure. Don't confuse delay with denial. What feels like waiting is actually transformation happening where you cannot interfere. You are not standing in uncertainty. You are standing in unfolding. And unfolding always feels slow until the moment it opens. Your story is not on pause. It is in construction. And God never rushes what will have to endure pressure. You are being prepared to receive without fear. You are being prepared to love without insecurity. You are being prepared to stand without needing proof. Soon, what you have sensed in fragments will form into clarity. Soon, what you have felt in your spirit will speak in reality. Soon, what had no words will find its voice. And when that day comes, you will look back and realize, the waiting did not weaken you, it made you unmovable. God says there is a moment approaching when everything that has felt suspended will suddenly feel settled. Not because circumstances magically become perfect overnight, but because truth will finally have room to breathe. And when truth breathes, peace follows. You won't have to fight for clarity anymore. You won't have to wonder where you stand. You won't have to guess what is real. The answers will arrive quietly but firmly, like something that has always belonged to you. You have been prepared not for drama, not for conflict, not for rivalry, but for stability. God never intended your future to be built on tension. The reason this season had to stretch was so that the foundation of what's coming could be strong enough to hold joy without fear. God knows that fragile beginnings create fragile outcomes. That is not your portion. There is a strength rising in you that you did not have before. Not the loud kind. Not the aggressive kind. The quiet knowing kind. The kind that no longer needs validation. The kind that no longer trembles at competitors. The kind that no longer panics at delay. This strength is your evidence that God has been working deeply, not quickly. She sees His love for you, and it terrifies her because she now understands that love can exist without possession. That care can live without control. That connection can flow without force. And that is the kind of love she never learned how to keep. You did not take anything from her. What is leaving was never sustained by truth. God says when doors close without confrontation, it is mercy. When distancing happens without violence, it is mercy. When endings come without destruction, it is mercy. You are witnessing mercy in motion. You will soon notice that the emotional weight you once felt when thinking about the situation is no longer there. The heaviness will lift without announcement. The anxiety will dissolve without explanation. One day you will realize you are breathing easier, sleeping deeper, thinking clearer. That is your sign that the spiritual battle already ended before the physical confirmation arrived. God does not need chaos to create change. God does not need pain to prove purpose. God does not need tears to validate destiny. Sometimes He simply removes what no longer belongs. You will see Him grow in ways you prayed for in private. You will watch maturity replace avoidance. You will observe courage replacing hesitation. You will notice honesty replacing delay. And when that growth reaches its fullness, it will naturally seek what reflects it. Growth always looks for its mirror. That is where you come in. Not as a reward. Not as a trophy. Not as a replacement. But as alignment. God says the connection between you was never emotional first, it was spiritual first. That is why distance never truly broke it. That is why silence never killed it. That is why time never erased it. What begins in the spirit cannot be undone by circumstance. You were never meant to chase this. You were meant to receive this. And receiving requires stillness, not striving. You asked God for answers, and He gave you endurance instead. You asked God for movement, and He gave you stability instead. You asked God for revelation, and He gave you peace instead. At times you thought He misunderstood your prayers. But now you understand, He answered at a deeper level than you expected. Because answers fade. Peace remains. Very soon, what once made her uneasy will no longer involve her at all. The triangle will dissolve into a straight line. The interference will fade into distance. The tension will resolve into clarity. And what once felt complicated will feel simple. God says when it arrives, it will not feel explosive. It will feel right. No fireworks. No chaos. No dramatic confessions. Just quiet truth standing in confidence. And you will recognize it immediately, not by excitement, but by peace. You will not need to defend the outcome. You will not need to justify the process. You will not need to convince anyone it is real. What is real does not need argument. She will eventually stop watching. Stop wondering. Stop comparing. Stop fearing. Because fear only survives where attachment still lives. God says your future will not be built on someone else's insecurity. It will be built on mutual clarity, mutual healing, and mutual readiness. Anything less would only recreate the pain you were saved from. You have been carried through this season without breaking. That alone proves God's hand has been on you. You did not harden. You did not become bitter. You did not abandon love. You did not lose faith. And because of that, your next season will not require recovery, it will begin with restoration. So today, God asks you to release the last question mark from your heart. Not because every detail is revealed, but because you no longer need the details to trust the author. What God starts, He finishes. What God promises, He fulfills. What God aligns, no one disrupts. What God joins, no fear separates. She saw His love for you. It terrified her. But God saw it first. And God approved it. And what God approves, no one can cancel. The waiting is ending. The shift is completing. The truth is stabilizing. The peace is arriving. Remain soft. Remain patient. Remain anchored. You are not losing anything. You are stepping into everything.